The Vijnana Bhairava Tantra operates as a rigorous technical manual. It bypasses abstract philosophy in favor of exact phenomenological execution. The text contains 112 specific dhāraṇās, precise, repeatable cognitive algorithms. Their function is to hack the standard waking state, systematically altering how localized human consciousness processes reality. To understand these algorithms, we have to look at the human experience of reality. We perceive the world as broken into billions of isolated fragments, but this state of separation is highly unstable, and when forced through the right cognitive mechanism, it collapses into a unified, still center. The human mind naturally defaults to a dualistic, separated reality. The text treats this perception as a structural error, requiring systematic deconstruction. The goal of the manual is to force the collapse of this perception, thereby revealing an underlying unbroken unity. Because human perception is tightly locked into this habit of separation, passive relaxation is ineffective. Reversing the process requires a precise, engineered cognitive algorithm. We will examine two distinct operations from the text, verse 54 and verse 55. Verse 54 operates top-down. It utilizes macrocosmic theory and cognitive force to reverse engineer reality itself. Verse 55 operates bottom-up. It ignores the cosmos to focus on the microcosmic physiological regulation of the breath. Both algorithms target the same localized state, Parā Devī, or Supreme Divine Consciousness. By leveraging opposite ends of the human experience, the vast conceptual intellect, and the immediate physical breath, both methodologies dismantle the same architecture of separation. The top-down methodology of verse 54 requires the practitioner to conceptualize the universe through its constituent parts. It relies on tattvas, the constitutive principles or fundamental building blocks of all physical and mental manifestation. This diagram represents the 36-level ontological framework of Kashmir Shaivism. It orders reality from the gross physical elements at the wide base up to supreme consciousness at the apex. Verse 54 deploys a mechanism called laya, or cosmic dissolution. The practitioner is instructed to mentally reverse the entire process of universal creation. The sequence begins by collapsing the gross elements, earth, water, and fire, upward, folding them into the subtle sensory elements. Next, those sensory elements dissolve into the ego, or ahamkara, and then further upward into the intellect, or buddhi. The practitioner forces this dissolution through the subtlest layers of reality, pulling primordial nature, prakriti, all the way up through Sadashiva. The final instruction demands that the last remaining subtle principles merge directly into their ultimate source, Parā Devī. By forcing the mind to systematically dismantle its own cosmological model, the practitioner traps localized consciousness. It is left with nowhere to rest but its original, unmanifest state. This progressive absorption of all existence into one's own self is known as Atma Vyapti. In the Tantric tradition, this is categorized as Shaktapaya, the path where consciousness energy, or Shakti, is the primary tool used to bridge the gap between the individual and the infinite. The result of executing this algorithm to completion is the disappearance of the perception of separation. Coming out of this meditation, the practitioner no longer perceives the universe as a collection of separate objects, but as the expression of divine energy. In Shaktapaya, the mind uses its capacity for conceptual geometry to deliberately fold itself out of existence. Verse 55 discards macrocosmic theory in favor of localized biological instructions. The focus narrows to prāṇa Shakti, the vital life force of the breath. It is the primary physical bridge linking biology to consciousness. The practitioner begins in a state called pīnam, where the breath is dense, gross, and audible. We can visualize this starting physiological state as a high-effort, high-amplitude biological rhythm. The practitioner must then consciously attenuate and soften this respiration. The target state is durbalam, an exceptionally refined breath where physical effort is almost imperceptible. This procedure reduces biological noise to zero. By systematically flattening the biological rhythm of the body, the practitioner removes the physiological static that usually anchors the ego, leaving the mind to rest in its own nature. Refining the breath is only the first step. Verse 55 requires the resulting subtle awareness to be anchored at specific spatial coordinates. The first option for this anchor is the spiritual heart, or hridaya. The second is the Dvadashanta, a point located exactly 12 finger widths beyond the physical body. Traditional commentary notes that mastering this localization generates an awareness so sharp it can maintain continuity even during deep dream states. Because this technique utilizes the body and the breath as the means to liberation, it is categorized as anavopaya. It is an extreme localization of awareness, holding a point of stillness within the internal space of the physical body. In the framework of Kashmir Shaivism, the physical body is not a flesh prison to be escaped. It is a biological apparatus that, when its internal oscillations are quieted, allows the underlying state of non-duality to become the primary object of perception. When we bring the cognitive deconstruction of verse 54 and the physiological refinement of verse 55 together, we see the complete architecture of the system. Look at the convergence of these two opposing methodologies. Despite requiring radically different inputs, the macrocosmic mind on one side and the microcosmic body on the other, both algorithms yield the same phenomenological output. The tradition defines this output state as Svātantrya. Svātantrya is distinguished from simple peace or mindfulness. It is defined as the innate sovereign freedom and unconditioned autonomy of consciousness. This shift becomes more than a temporary state through the repeated deconstruction of dualistic habit. By consistently tracing the architecture of the world back to its source, the mind eventually loses its reflex to see objects as truly separate, integrating this sovereignty into the baseline of daily experience. The boundary between the practitioner and the universe dissolves. Whether utilizing the vast architecture of the cosmos or the subtle edge of a single breath, true liberation occurs the moment the mind ceases its division and rests entirely in its source.